All right, thank you everyone for joining. We're going to go ahead and wait about 1 or 2 minutes to let other people join the webinar. And then it's always kind of fun at the beginning if people want to write into chat about where you're calling in from. And I'll actually ask our panelists, Steph and Amelia, where are you guys calling in from?
I'm calling you from Brooklyn, New York.
I'm calling in from Santa Monica, California.
And is that your real background, Amelia?
It is, yeah. We have a nice space at the office that I am taking
Wow.
advantage of. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It looks fake, but then like the trees are moving. So it's a little bit confusing.
Yeah. It's just real enough.
Yeah. And then Steph, are you working from the office or working from home?
I'm working from home today.
Okay. Very nice. In a tiny New York City apartment.
Yeah, I'm in
There's
a Brooklyn
enough space.
apartment, so it's not as small as the Manhattan
Okay.
apartments, but it's pretty small.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, thanks for new people who have just joined us. We're just waiting here about another 30 seconds to give other people time to join. But if you want to write into the chat where you're calling in from, it's kind of fun to see where people are joining us from. So we have Indianapolis, someone else in Brooklyn, Canada, Los Angeles, and I'm actually sitting in Colorado. So Denver,
Ah,
Minneapolis, St. Louis. I love it. Someone from New Zealand. I spent about a year in New Zealand and New Hampshire. I wonder what time it is in New Zealand. Thanks for joining us if it's way out of your work hour. All right, 7 a.m. Okay, we'll try and make it a good morning for you then. All right, so we will go ahead and kick things off. So I will share my screen and we'll get going. All right. First off, am I sharing the right screen? Are we seeing the slide deck?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm excited about this conversation today. So we're going to be talking about portfolio onboarding best practices. So this is not about onboarding new employees, and it's not about onboarding new customers. This is specific to onboarding new companies that you just invested in to your VC firm. And one of the reasons that I'm excited about this is I actually used to previously work at a VC firm and was intentional about setting up onboarding processes and just discovered how valuable it is in setting up the founder and investor relationship up for success. So really excited to have two VC platform people joining us today who have been a part of setting up these processes at their VC firms or executing these processes. So excited to learn some best practices from them today. So to introduce who our panelists are today, we have Steph Jones, so sitting in Brooklyn, and Steph is a program manager at Forum Ventures. So prior to working at Forum Ventures, she previously worked in the New York City public sector, researching equity-driven tech-enabled initiatives. So very cool work there. And Steph actually started as an associate at Forum with a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then we have Amelia Zack, who's leading portfolio operations at M13. And Amelia, prior to working at M13, actually had a background in media and entertainment, which is very cool, and then was working in the startup ecosystem as a chief of staff and did strategy and corporate partnerships. And then myself, hi, I'm Belle. So I have been at Visible for a few years now, and I am leading our go-to-market efforts for our investor platform. And then we'll just spend a little bit more time getting to know the firms that the panelists are working at. So Steph, if you could add a little bit more color to who is Forum and what are you doing at Forum?
Absolutely. So Forum VC, we started about 7 years ago in SF. We are a early stage B2B SaaS venture fund with a mission to make the B2B SaaS journey easier, more accessible, and successful for early stage founders. We create, accelerate, and fund companies from ideation all the way to seed. And here I'm program manager. That includes a lot of things, but specifically I operationalize our accelerator and support our founders from zero to, whatever that next milestone is in their journey. Usually it's a seed round, but it depends. It really is focused on the founder journey and kind of what they need. And that's kind of when I tag in.
I love it. Really interesting work. Lots of different ways to support founders at that stage. And did you already share how many companies has Forum invested in?
We are high volume investors. We've invested in over 300 companies thus far. This year alone, we're trying to invest in 120 companies.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. And then Amelia, tell us about M13.
Yeah, hi guys. M13 is a venture capital firm based out of Los Angeles. We're currently investing out of our third vehicle, which is a $400 million vehicle, and we are focused on the enabling technologies that power work, commerce, health, and money. At the firm, I focus on portfolio operations, which is a part of our platform team, which we like to call Propulsion at M13, and that team is quite large compared to other venture capital firms. We have 3 operating partners to every one investing partner. So we're about 50 people total, and a large portion of those are solely focused on the growth of our portfolio companies.
I love it. Thank you. All right, and then just a bit more context setting. A lot of you that have joined us today are actually customers of Visible, but if you're new, welcome, and just a bit of background about Visible. So for our investor platform, we're all about post-investment monitoring and reporting. The company was founded in 2015, profitable since 2017, and have just over 350 VC funds using our software. So with that, we'll go ahead and kick things off. Please do feel like you can write in questions while we're talking here. So use the Q&A function at the bottom of Zoom to write in questions. I'll bring those into the conversation if they're relevant at the time, but if not, we'll definitely address those questions at the end of the webinar. So really hoping for engaging audience. So feel free to write your questions in. And then the webinar will be recorded, and so we'll send that out at the end. So today we're going to be talking about defining the onboarding process. So if you're coming from a smaller firm and maybe haven't really put intention or thought about how you should be welcoming companies to your portfolio, we're going to get actually an idea of what that looks like at both M13 and Forum and why that matters. And then we're going to talk about some tips for building rapport with founders, welcoming companies into your community, connecting companies to resources, and finally, setting expectations about the portfolio data collection process during onboarding. So to kick things off, Steph, I'd love to start with you and hear a little bit more about what the onboarding process looks like at Forum and kind of how that fits into your wider firm strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So onboarding companies is a twofold process for us. First, we are onboarding companies to our community of 300 plus SaaS founders and the resources we have available to them, perks, etc., stuff like that. But also, and just as important, we are onboarding founders to map out their founder journey and experience with us. So the foundation of Forum is, like I said, the mission to make B2B SaaS more accessible and easier. And to do that, we have to meet founders where they are when they join our community. So that means fully understanding their product stage, how many problem interviews they've had, how good they are at selling and marketing, and their gaps, so we could fill them and be real partners in that journey. So all that is kind of what happens when founders join us, and off the bat, we really try to dig in and get to know them so we can enable their success.
Great. And yeah, when you guys are investing in companies, are they aware of all the work that you are going to put into to kind of get up to speed and connect them to resources? Or is that like during the onboarding process, they're kind of learning about Forum and what's available for the first time?
I actually think one of the pulls for working with Forum is the white glove service we provide. It is part of our brand, how closely we work with founders. We do call ourselves their fractional co-founders. So it's something they're definitely aware of. And I do think they're aware of it, but when they get into it, they realize that we really mean it. It's a really in-depth process, and we're there to walk them through it.
Yeah. And so there's lots of different ways that you could be supporting companies. So it could be sales, it could be marketing, it could be, helping them find customers. What do you think is like the most common way that Forum is supporting companies at the pre-seed seed stage?
I think it's in two ways. Specifically in this market, we're finding that our portfolio companies need traction and need to fundraise, and they need traction to fundraise. So we are helping them really iron out their go-to-market strategies and motions to kind of get that early stage traction to de-risk themselves for investors to follow on funding.
Mm-hmm.
And then we walk
And
them
this,
through the fundraising journey.
okay. Excellent. And then since you have such a big portfolio, are you also kind of leveraging relationships within the portfolio? So kind of introducing founders to other founders and things like that. Is that a part of kind of your support network as well?
Absolutely. We have an awesome group of founders that are walking at different stages of their own founder journey, and we find it absolutely priceless to kind of introduce a founder to someone that is a couple steps ahead of them, that is working in the same market as them, that might be working the same market, targeting different customers, to share those strategies, share possible connections. So that's one of the first things we do when we work with the founders. We put together a plan, and in that plan we identify founders they should be talking to and make
Oh,
those
I love that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, we're kind of getting to a part that will come up later in the presentation. But I think that's something that I realized when I was working in platform for the first time, which a lot of our audience are kind of platform members or newer to platform, is really like all the pressure is not on you as the individual, but being a connector and knowing how to kind of make those connections within the portfolio or with the right people outside of the portfolio. So that's great that Forum's being intentional about doing that from the very start when you're onboarding companies. Great. And then Amelia, would love to hear from you as well, kind of the details about, how does M13 think about onboarding companies to your portfolio and how does that fit into kind of M13's wider strategy or brand?
Yeah. The way we've approached it has been evolving, honestly, over the course of this year. We have really focused on putting a twofold approach. One, which is an internal process between every stakeholder at M13, and then what's the external process of what the portfolio company's journey will be and how they will get a clear message of one, who we are, how to interact with us, and what resources they'll be able to access kind of self-servicely at all times. That's something we've really been focusing on this year is what are always on resources we can give them and how do we present those right at the beginning of the relationship so they know, how to work with us and where to find them. And so this year we've kind of been reimagining what that internal process looks like, which I'm happy to get into. I think we might touch on it later, but for the external process, it is a welcome session with our new company that involves their founder plus the senior executive leaders that they'd like to bring on. And that allows us to do a little bit more expert mapping between our potential, head of product and their head of product. We have a lot of functional teams in-house that have operating experience for our former founders themselves. And so we like to do that matching early on. So our talent team meets their talent team and our marketing team meets their marketing team. And from there, we can kind of grow the broader ecosystem of once we've made the connection with the M13 team, then we can grow our preferred partners on top of that and our vendors and any kind of experts. We can invite them to events. I'd say the most connectivity we do is immediately put them in our Slack channel. We have a Slack workspace for all of our portfolio companies, their founders, as well as the senior executive leaders. And there's very specific channels that we've outlined where people can go to for help, whether it's talent, and that allows them to access not only our team specifically, but also the entire portfolio, industry specific channels, tools and resource channels. And that we've seen a lot of success in that of training founders to leverage our network to work for themselves.
Great. So yeah, in your Slack channel, it's all people from M13 or also some of those external kind of service providers as well.
It's only people from M13 as well as just the portfolio. So we try to keep it a private space, but we oftentimes link resources to those, pre-vetted partners that we have or the vendor relationships we have. It's really kind of our private workspace to feed them information and also allow for collaboration among founders that are dealing with similar problems.
Yeah, great. Okay, that makes sense. And then a question I had for Steph is about forums intake forms. So I think this is kind of unique to forum, or maybe Amelia, you can comment on it as well. But what are your intake forms, and why are you guys doing those at forum?
Yeah, so when founders onboard with us, we send them a pretty in-depth intake form via Visible. This intake covers everything from where you're located and your address to where you are in your product journey, your product stage, how many customer discovery interviews you've done, how do you think you're doing in marketing, what do you think your sales skills are, and this is just a little bit of it. The intake form is pretty in-depth, and we do this because first and foremost, we want, as partners to our founders, we need to understand where they are in their journey off the bat to take them where they need to go. So that's first and foremost why we do it. And secondly, this helps us build out a plan for our founders that we actually work with them to build and present to them, that we take our knowledge as high volume investors and their priorities, we put them together, and this plan kind of takes them from day one at Forum to their next raise. If that includes, you need to get 250K in ARR, that includes you need to do some more customer discovery, stuff like that. You need to settle on a product to show investors and show your customers. We kind of identify their priorities and their needs to set them up for a successful raise. And our intake form is definitely the foundation of that plan that we put together.
Very cool. And then Amelia, are you guys doing something similar at M13, or what does it look like to kind of get up to speed on where companies are at?
Yeah, we actually do run a similar process. I definitely will take some learnings from that stuff, and would love to potentially switch that to Visible. But we use Typeform right now and have a fairly similar process of reaching out. I think our thought process as well, similar to Steph, is that we use that as an opportunity where we have the founder's attention and we think it's okay to take up their time in that moment and try to pull back on any kind of surveys or intake forms in the future for anything we might need. And so we ask for a location, and we also ask for all their assets so we can properly market them to our communities. We ask for their org charts. We ask for any kind of like materials, the collateral, very similar structure. And we found that it is almost always completed within the first 24 hours of sending the form out. And it just helps us internally, like Steph said, develop the best plan.
Yeah. And there's just a lot of excitement right when the deal closes.
Yeah.
So it's a good time to kind of make that ask of your founder. So you guys have that, rich and relevant information to then support them in the future. So maybe for the people listening, if you're not doing an intake form to kind of get to know your companies better, the takeaway sounds like do it during the onboarding, right when they join. All right. So next we'll talk about tips for building rapport with founders. And Steph, I saw you posted this a little bit ago and just really liked it because you seem to really emphasize the founder experience at Forum, which I just think is excellent to always have the position of kind of founders first, from the investor side. So yeah, Steph is active on LinkedIn, so connect with Steph if you want to, and can read through this post later. But just to kind of talk about building rapport with founders, you both are onboarding a lot of company, or like a high frequency of companies, since you're bigger firms. And so it's kind of a lot to build a relationship with a lot of people quickly. But how would you say you've gone about developing rapport with founders quickly, kind of building trust? And then, yeah, maybe we'll just start with that actually, if you have any tips to share. And this can be, we'll start with Steph actually.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah, so I think actually the rapport efforts start in the investment process when we kind of um, discuss the ways in which Forum will help enable a founder's success, via being their fractional co-founder, by having, an MD that they're matched with that is their partner in everything they're doing. And then that we kind of build on that momentum post-investment. When they meet with me, every founder off the bat gets a welcome call from me. It's one-on-one, and we kind of talk about what to expect. We hype it up a little bit about, what's coming down the pipeline for them. And then we talk about their priorities with Forum in that first call. How can we really enable that success? And then that momentum keeps building. We have a full kind of cohort kickoff call monthly where the CEO and founder of Forum, Mike, gets on the call and introduces himself and welcomes founders personally.
That's great.
All the partners at our firm joined that call, and a lot of members of our team joined that call to introduce themselves and welcome founders to the community as well, which I think is really important, and also kind of sets us apart from maybe other interactions they've had with other funds. They see that, we're invested in them, and we show our faces and we show up for them, kind of off the bat and within their first few weeks of joining us. And then, we do things like in-person quarterly dinners where we invite founders that are a little further in the community to come and meet the founders that, just joined us. And we're doing something this summer. We're doing founder camp, our inaugural founder camp, to kind of build community and kind of further build that rapport between us and founders, but also founders and other founders. And we just try to keep the engine going and come up with different ways to get founders excited about working with us and meeting other founders in our community, because we believe founders are literally the battery that powers us. So their experience is essential.
Yes, I love it. I love that that's a mix of like virtual events, so very scalable, kind of easier to coordinate, and then also in-person events. And that it seems like something that Forum is doing well is kind of doing what they say they're going to do, and that you guys are actually having, your CEO or kind of head of Forum joining those calls at the beginning and kind of putting a face to Forum and connecting with founders right at the start. And then Amelia, how about you? Any tips or things that M13 does well for kind of building rapport with founders?
Yeah, I think our rapport starts in the diligence process. Our investment leads who are working on the deal are often flying to the founders to meet them, understanding their entire team. So we like to integrate a lot of our offering partners into that diligence process. So by the time the investment's made, we almost always feel like family from the beginning, having had those interactions very early on. And then we kind of do a much more programatized welcome, where we kind of have that large welcome session, all of the operating partners and investing partners who join, as well as the two founders of the company. And it's a big chance to kind of have like a welcome celebration of this, we're kicking things off. And that's where we have a deck that kind of walks through who the team is, what our experience is, and kind of touch on the experiences that we've had, since we have so many former founders that are in-house within the firm that we have. We like to kind of trade some stories and give people a lot of resources up front. And then from then on, we have these programmatic check-ins with our kind of propulsion account director leaders, who are checking in 30 days after, 60 days after the welcome session, 120 days after, and kind of checking in on how is the work going, what else can we help you with, how can we, reach out to you better. Let's kind of having a more open and honest communication in the beginning about how ways of working together, in the same way that you would start a new job and be kind of communicating with people to find the groove of how to properly pull resources from each other and develop that relationship.
I love it. Yeah, so really intentional check-in. So it's not just like the initial welcome call, but kind of being thoughtful about, okay, 60 days, 90 days, where are we at, versus maybe the goals that you guys had set out. And would you say that all founders are receptive to kind of this really engaged onboarding, or do you guys have kind of engagements where founders are like, really excited to have your money, but actually I don't want to be that involved with what's going on. And how do you guys handle that?
Yeah, I'd say, founders are people and people are people. So some founders are, a little less engaged, very heads down in what they're building and what they're doing. And we kind of set the expectation that this is a partnership, and in a partnership, for this to work, we need you to work with us. And that, includes at minimum, please fill out your onboarding form and meet with your MDs so we can, get
Mhm.
going and get things running. And eventually, I believe most founders kind of open up like, a flower, they develop and they grow. And I think that, creating the expectation that this is a partnership and you are helping us help you by being engaged is
Mhm.
really helpful.
Yeah, I love that metaphor of founders opening up like a flower over time. Just as like
I
more trust
know.
is built, being more willing to engage and everything like that. And then Amelia, just to bring back something you said earlier, that M13 seems to incorporate like stories of previous like successful engagements with founders, which seems like that could be really compelling to kind of share those kind of case studies with other new founders to kind of set the tone of how to work well together, what's been successful in the past.
Yeah, we've tried to take a lot of those learnings we've had with how we've been able to help companies or what we've noticed across trends in terms of different functional areas that they might need help with and say, here's some things we've noticed. If you ever are feeling like you need help with hiring or any type of product launch, I think we try to give some examples of those milestones where they could reach out to us and offer support so they know clearly what our offerings are and when to pick up the phone and call us. But we do try to communicate to founders and set the expectation that we're the type of investors that are always on whenever you need us. Early in the morning, late at night, we are there for you from the smallest thing to the biggest thing. We kind of want to be that person that's very hands-on and the person that you send your wins to as well as your challenges equally.
Have either of you gotten a very out there, strange request from a founder that you definitely couldn't help with?
Good question.
I know.
We get a lot of requests from our founders. We actually have an ask form that's constantly being filled out.
Hmm.
We've gotten, anything from, general, I need intros to like, I need you to actually build out my sales motion with me, my customer discovery motion with me. It's not working, nothing's working. And we have a really awesome platform team that have expertises in various areas that kind of tag in when necessary.
Hmm.
So, you know, we're kind of building from the ground up with our founders and doing what we can where we can.
So it sounds like nothing's out of scope, even if it was kind of obscure. You're like, we got it. Let's
Yeah,
tackle this together.
we
Okay.
always try.
I
Yeah,
can't
very
think of
good.
anything off the top of my
Okay.
head, but potentially some weird location requests of I'm across the globe. Is there anyone you know? But then that's an exciting challenge for us to kind of put
Yeah,
the pieces together. Yeah,
yeah. And
the fun
so
part of
we create
working
a
in
lot of,
platform.
yes, definitely that. It's really expansive, so we could get all different sorts of questions. Just when Visible creates content for founders, some advice that we like to give is when you are making an ask to an investor to be really specific about it, because it just makes it easier for an investor to then respond if they're like, I need an introduction to a customer in New York City who's doing this, instead of making it just like, help me find anyone type thing. So that makes a lot of sense. Um, so also in this section, building rapport with founders, are either of your firms sending swag to new companies when you invest in new companies, or is that old school? Are we still doing that? Do you have any recommendations? What do founders like?
Yeah, we send swag to our newest founders. We're still kind of developing the strategy, but we actually hand pack our swag boxes in our New York offices and send them off. We include like a hoodie and a welcome note and some other kind of cute things in there to just welcome to the welcome them to the community, but also just create that momentum and excitement.
Love it. So we're still doing swag. Founders still love it. I mean, a hoodie sounds great. Amelia, what are you guys doing?
Our
You done in the
strategy
past?
has, yeah, shifted over the years. So there was a moment in time we were sending swag out. We actually now really love the idea of when founders are there in person with us, giving them the opportunity to kind of see the swag in person and um, kind of have that be the opportunity to gift our founders with anything swag related or kind of extra perks that we have in our community. So we oftentimes in the onboarding process will evaluate what events are coming up, whether they're some of our larger temple events or just smaller community office hours, gatherings, and bring a ton of swag to that. We have also hoodies and water bottles. And my favorite one is our brand team designs these awesome, really bright colored socks. So comfortable. And it just makes me so happy to look down and see the M13 logo on them. So if anyone doesn't have socks, I would highly recommend. It is a really fun gift to receive.
Love it. All right. So some ideas there if you aren't already sending swag to new companies as you welcome them to your community. And maybe a final question here related to kind of just the initial steps of building rapport with founders that you're engaging with for the first time. How have you, Amelia, kind of gotten up to speed about all the context on a new deal during the onboarding process? Because obviously during diligence, the investment team is like really getting to know the company. And so without them having to kind of retell everything then to the platform team members, how do you go about getting up to speed?
Yeah, this kind of ties into our internal process that we implemented at the beginning of this year, but we've done a good job of, there is so much work that's done during the diligent process, and all those documents are incredibly valuable. So we have within our platform team kind of a core platform team that really kind of focuses on ingesting that information and helping to disseminate it within the whole firm so that everyone is one, aware of the new investment, but two, aware of how we might be able to help them in when we're creating that roadmap. And what often starts is there's a smaller group that meets with the investment leads. And that's the time we normally take an hour, whether we need it, we kind of block that out and say, we're going to sit down, walk through the product, walk through the website, all their marketing materials, and just do a deep dive as if we were not investors and just consumers of the business, and taking that kind of like third party approach as much as we can. And then from there, we kind of will have the onboarding intake form, which is incredibly helpful and kind of piece together this roadmap. We'll also in the welcome session ask some specific and pointed questions where there might be gaps in information that we're missing. But I'd say that's helpful. We also have, we use Notion within the firm, and we'll kind of set up a database on the company that has all the most important information about the company and the stage at which they're at, what kind of their challenges are, what that roadmap is. So anyone within the company, regardless of where they sit and their function, has access to that Notion board, which is incredibly useful to have that as a self-service option for people within the firm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And to me, that seems like an excellent way to build rapport with a new company is like you took the time to kind of dig into those diligence documents, or can say on that welcome call, like, I did a trial of your product, or did you just update your website, to just know that you've done some background kind of research before meeting with them for the first time.
Yeah, we try to have that initial like welcome celebration. We spend the first half, being very excited, but the second half really is we're getting into work. It's we're kicking things off, and we try to come as prepared as possible because there has been all of these months of work, and we oftentimes know very intimately about their business in ways that we want to be really mindful of their time.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe final question here is, do you guys have a set slide deck that you're like going through during that welcome call to kind of introduce the background of your firms and kind of resources and things like that? Saw some head nods. Okay.
Yeah,
so that's
we
standard.
do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, just to
it's
help
helpful.
facilitate the conversation. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see here. We've actually touched on some of this already, but just being intentional about welcoming companies to your community. So that could be, welcoming them to the founder community, your wider service provider network, or whatever that looks like. Would love to hear maybe just what are the building blocks of the community at your VC firm? And yeah, who are the people, like the first introductions that you make, or what does the first 30, 60 days look like as you're welcoming companies into your community? And yeah, maybe Amelia, will start with you.
Yeah. So in terms of community, Slack is a big place that we like to utilize. We immediately have a direct Slack channel between the portfolio company and M13. So it's just a one-to-one connection that they have available always on. We also add them into the larger Slack community where they have access to all those kind of bespoke channels to pull on the larger community. We'll immediately look at the roadmap and see what type of in-person events we can, based on their location and kind of where our team is, we try to plug people in there. And then I mentioned in the beginning, but we have these kind of always on resources. And one company that I would fully recommend everyone to check out is a company called Cabal, Cabal. That platform was recently launched out of Craft Ventures, and we've been a partner with them in kind of creating a self-service portal that our portfolio companies are added to, and they can go in, they can see a list of all the portfolio companies that we have. So they can request introductions to each other, which is just incredibly helpful and at service to them all the time. We have a list of all of our preferred partners, which are agencies and freelancers and fractional talent that we've kind of pre-vetted, already worked with, have discounted rates with. We also have all of our vendors. So if you're looking for, to build your tech stack or to, get a discount on something in your ecosystem, it's a good point of contact. And then there's a whole sales component piece to the platform as well, where you can basically access the M13 network. We have kind of downloaded all of our contacts into that network, and someone can ingest their sales pipeline and see where we can kind of seamlessly make those customer introductions for them. So that's a huge resource that we kind of provide off the bat, and that's one aspect of our community that they can access without necessarily reaching out to us on a consistent basis.
Cool, I love it. So that was Cabal, and it sounds like a great resource to kind of connect companies to your network of service providers, other founders, your team, and then also using Slack as well.
Yes, yeah.
Very good. Yeah, Steph, would love to hear at Forum how you guys think about kind of like the building blocks of your community. And then would also love to hear how you are fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion into your community at Forum. I know that was kind of your initial role at Forum, so would love to hear about how you think about that.
Yeah, so community is extremely important at Forum. On our platform team, we actually have an awesome community team that is laser focused on nurturing and building this community. We believe that being surrounded by like-minded individuals walking the same journey is priceless and a huge differentiator for us. So we do that in a few ways. Like Amelia, we have Slack as kind of home base. All our founders get dropped into Slack. They have their own Slack channels where we have the team on there, their MD and their team on there as well. Like I mentioned before, we introduce founders to other founders in our community we believe there will be great synergy with. And then we do other things like we host educational sessions all year round, once a week on go-to-market product or fundraising that are always available to our founders. They can hop on, learn from a mentor in our community, but also learn from each other and interact with each other regularly once a week. We also enable founders to use each other as resources in weekly gatherings that we call founder forums. In the founder forums, we kind of highlight a spotlight founder, and that founder kind of tackles a pressing issue in their company together with a lot of other founders, and kind of we get their awesome brains together to kind of figure out this blocker. And we found that to be a really great community builder, especially virtually for our founders. They have a time to first get to know each other's companies, but also actually have a hand in potentially fixing a problem that one founder is facing. And then we also have our perks portal and an online founder resource that we built specifically for our founder community. So in this founder resource, we call it Forum Founder Feed. We have the entire portfolio listed where they could reach out to each other and kind of know what each other's building. We have all our mentors listed. We have our kind of customer directory listed as well, and our full team, along with just general resources from things like LOI templates to job descriptions to honestly, any template that you could think a founder has asked for, it lives on our founder feed. And more. So yeah, that kind of answers the first half of the question, which is kind of what happens for founders once they join our community and how we kind of nurture those relationships. But in regards to specifically D and I believe one thing is absolutely critical to the experience of all underfunded founders in a portfolio is not only the belief, but the feeling that they aren't alone. So one thing that's important is just making those introductions to other founders that kind of might have similar lived experiences as them. But to push it even a step further, one thing that we really think about intentionally at Forum is to invest in our portfolio and make sure our portfolio is diverse as much as possible, and to kind of set a standard and a goal that we're trying to reach to diversify our portfolio. If we left it up to fate and just, we're going to invest in the best founders possible and not think intentionally about diversity, our portfolio will likely not look like the world. And most other other VC funds that don't invest intentionally and think about diversity intentionally, their portfolios do not mirror the world. And therefore, oftentimes founders that they do invest in that are underrepresented and do align with underrepresented communities, they feel isolated and they feel alone. And they feel like, honestly, they're the only person in the room. I'm sure all three of us have had that experience, and that's something that actively works against a founder's mental health. So when you think about building diversity, you have to start from the top of the funnel. And when you think about investing in a diverse founder, you also have to start from the top of the funnel, because you don't want to invest in one founder and for them to be the only founder that looks like them and has that experience in the portfolio. So we try to actively avoid that by thinking really intentionally about diversity at our fund and to try to improve ourselves every day and every quarter, et cetera, et cetera.
I love it. Thanks so much for sharing more detail on that. Really important, like you said, to start at top of funnel as you guys are thinking about that, just like who are we investing in and why, and does this reflect the world? So really like that you shared that. All right, we'll keep moving along here. And we already kind of touched on this, but if you guys want to share a little bit more, I know it sounds like Amelia's using Cabal to connect and Slack to connect companies to resources. And Steph at Forum, they have kind of a custom built portal. And you guys kind of both mentioned maybe perk pages. I just listed these two perks here. Of course, Visible also has a perk for founders, but Bolster is about, connecting companies to talent. And then I think most people know HubSpot as a CRM. But within your portfolio, are there like favorite perks that companies get excited about that you're also excited to share with companies that you'd want to kind of recommend to maybe newer VC firms or newer people working in platform?
Yeah, I think first, like one thing that comes to mind is just having a perks portal. Like we use Built First, and Built First does a really good job of kind of dropping perks into our portal for us that we enable founders to see. But a few perks that come to mind is founders are always excited about HubSpot having a CRM. They're always excited about their AWS credits. I think what's super relevant right now to founders is Forecaster. Kind of having, I think it's really useful for founders, especially founders that are raising and doing financial modeling. It kind of just helps enable them do that in a more streamlined way.
That's awesome. Maybe we'll follow up with that link to Forecaster. I actually hadn't heard of that one before, so that sounds like definitely a good resource for founders.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out too. One thing I would just note is that what we've tried to do as well with the perks is to have a dedicated account manager on the team of the company that we're offering. So if it's AWS, we like to hand the contact information over of someone there that can be incredibly helpful to them if they have more questions, and just kind of having a point of contact for someone at the portfolio company. So we try to keep that hand in hand with any perks that we offer, and create a regular process where we're trying to add as many perks on a regular cadence as possible. So founders are always having something new to discover as they grow through various stages of their company.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And this is maybe outside of the scope of onboarding, but of course, a really valuable resource to founders is introductions to other investors. So how do you guys, like, do you have, a system to track investors that you make introductions to? Or do you make that list available to your companies and say, hey, let us know if there's any investor on this list that would want to be introduced to? Or how does that work at both of your firms?
Yeah. We've been keeping a lot of importance on list building. So internally within the company, even across just who our portfolio customers are and what type of industry connections would be helpful to them, where they're going to be in terms of conferences. So just kind of that network mapping is something that's a key focus for us right now. And I think that also plays into investor conversations. And it honestly does start at onboarding. We put together a timeline and a map of what growth will look like and what maybe some key milestones are. And part of that is mapping out who the key investors are for the next raise and what key investors will be down the line in other stages of growth and what specific customers would look like. So we kind of try to do that network mapping and build lists for ourselves that we can just utilize no matter what moment in time they're in. And HubSpot, I know it's on here, but has been a good resource to us. We're still kind of building our CRM in a way that works for us. So I would recommend to anyone to pay attention to that list building.
Yeah, I agree on the list building. We have an awesome investor relations manager that kind of runs a really great fundraising process with our founders. That includes them building out their own target investor list and kind of comparing that to our database that she works diligently to build out, as well in the fundraising process. We run a pretty unique fundraising process for our founders, where they kind of showcase themselves to our investor database, and our investors can book directly with them. 3 times a year. We call it Investor Week for our founders, and our investor relation manager runs that process. And we found that it's fairly successful, and it's a really great time for our founders to kind of start creating that momentum in their fundraising process.
Very cool. So you said that's investors reaching out to your companies during that week?
Yeah, so we build a investor database, always on, always building. Our investor manager works closely on that. And then during Investor Week, we identify the founders that would like to go out to raise. We work really closely with them to create a narrative, build their pitch deck, work on their financial modeling, anything you can think of that a founder needs to raise successfully. We try to walk them through that journey, and then it culminates in Investor Week that happens 3 times a year, where investors in our database get access to this website we build for our founders and book directly with their founders.
Very cool. Yeah, that's very cool. I love it. All right, so final few slides here, and then if you guys have questions, feel free again to write into the chat or the Q&A. So during the onboarding process also can be a good time to set expectations around reporting. So we'd love to hear from both of you, kind of how do you weave this into the onboarding process? When do you bring this up? Both of you are using Visible, so how do you introduce companies to Visible during the onboarding process? Maybe Steph, will start with you.
Yeah, so onboarding and our Visible intake form is one of the first things our founders do with us. They get that Visible link. We ask them to fill it out within a week to kind of hit the ground running with them. But also something that really happens that's also really interesting is once founders are added to our Visible, they're also added to our quarterly metrics form and intake. So we track our founders kind of metrics and where they are in traction and runway, etc. It's a really short form, but we track it quarterly just to keep on top of where our founders are, and to be able to kind of dive in when necessary, if need be.
Yeah. And so are you communicating at all kind of like which metrics you'll be asking for, or are there just kind of the common metrics, so don't need to set expectations around that?
We communicate for the onboarding form that it's pretty in-depth, and that we'll probably be asking for a lot of things, such as what if your competitive research or your product roadmap. But for the quarterly metrics form, it's pretty standard metrics that our founders fill out. So they kind of understand it's stuff we need.
Yeah. Okay, great. And then Amelia, how about you at M13?
Yeah, our visible intake also is through the onboarding process. It's sent after the welcome session, and we kind of that is a set of dedicated email to introduce Visible to founders. We also offer, through Visible, a perk of a free Visible Light plan, which is awesome. I also give them your contact information, Bell, as our kind of direct account manager, so they can go ahead and set up a session directly with you to have one-on-one time if they have any questions. But that's really, it is also verbally mentioned in the welcome meeting that we do have a biannual cadence of KPI collection. And in terms of our metrics, everything is standard. If there are kind of any special or unique metrics, we've already kind of identified that with the portfolio company. They have either requested that we're tracking it. It's something that we're doing together in partnership. So there's never any kind of surprises, and I wouldn't recommend anyone to feel nervous about asking for anything more. It is something that, you're in it together. Founders will be receptive to things you're tracking, and it will only be a learning opportunity for both of you. But yeah, we have not found that any founders are kind of any challenge with collecting that information. It's something that I think helps both of us stay on track with the relationship and the partnership.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then also, if you're introducing this during the onboarding process, it's kind of a part of this conversation of we're making so much available to you and want to support you and are going to make all these connections. And we also need this in return, right? And here's why. So it sounds like that's pretty smooth for both of you to introduce to companies during the onboarding process.
Yeah, I think it
All
also
right.
too.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, I think it sets the expectation of they can see how the metrics align with the work that we're putting in and the work that we're helping them on. So as we're, any kind of like plan that we're putting together for the company, they're intimately involved with. It's not something we do in a silo. So I think it is helpful for them to be involved in that goal setting and to see those two things hand in hand. Visible actually does a really good job of helping us map out the future for the portfolio company themselves. It's a good tool.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like an example that just comes to mind is like if they need to be at a certain, amount of revenue before they go on to raise their Series A or customer traction or something like that. You guys have aligned on that goal during the onboarding process, and now you're checking in on it, throughout the year. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And then here's just a slide about kind of tips that we have for setting yourself up for data collection success. I'll share these slides with you guys afterwards, so I won't go in depth on this now. And I actually didn't see questions come in. I saw comments. People were excited about the socks. I think that was the M13 socks. So +1 for that. And then also just another kind of +1 for forecaster. So if you guys haven't checked that out. So a question came in. Let's see. So for both of you, what are your go-to resources for benchmarking data? I think this is company benchmarking data. Do either of you guys have access to benchmarking data? Are you using that at either of your firms? I think this is kind of outside data to be able to give insight to companies of like you're on track, you're off track compared to other companies at your stage. We can actually follow up with some resources if there's nothing immediately that comes to mind. I wish I could remember off the top of my head because we actually discussed this in a previous webinar that we did recently. But maybe we'll just do a quick plug that Visible allows for intra-portfolio benchmarking. So can do, benchmarking and quartiles within Visible within your portfolio, and then can follow up with those other resources for you, Rachel, unless anything came to mind, Steph and Amelia, for benchmarking
That sounds
data.
great. Yeah. So
Okay.
we definitely have some resources. I'm blanking on the names, but happy to follow up with some resources in our network.
Sounds good. And then a question for Steph, is Forums Investor Week similar to a demo day? at the end of an accelerator program. So I guess it's like, are the companies presenting live to these investors? And are all the teams looking for similar stages of funding, or is it kind of across the board?
I would say it's similar. I would say it's our version of a demo day. We don't have companies present live. We build a web page for our founders and drive investor interest towards that web page to book directly with founders. We support our founders in their fundraisers from anywhere from the pre-seed rounds through Series A sometimes. So if all of our founders can participate in Investor Week, regardless of if they're in the accelerator or coming out of our seed fund or et cetera, et cetera. So we do support all our founders in their raises.
Amazing. And actually, Andrew, thank you so much. You must have joined our previous webinar and remembered better than I did. Resources for benchmarking data that we've mentioned previously is OpenView and Benchmark It. And again, we'll follow up with those links. So Andrew, thanks for backing me up there and knowing the right answer. Another question came in. And maybe we'll end on this one. How do you both measure success in your roles? This is something that we've talked about before, but I think it's a really important question, especially for people, hiring a platform person to their firm for the first time, or maybe looking to grow the platform function, just kind of being able to measure success. So how do you both think about that within the context of your firm? And yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, so whoever's ready to answer first.
We measure it in a few ways. I think our North Star definitely is we collect NPS scores from all our founders. We have a kind of target NPS score we'd like to hit quarterly for to kind of tackle that that founder experience and get that founder love. We do collect this feedback from founders. The total NPS, how they feel about our workshops, how they feel about any introductions we've shared with them, or introductions we've introduced them to, et cetera, et cetera. We collect all that feedback from every single one of our founders, or at least try to. If our founders, some founders are a little resistant to it, but we collect that, we put it in a summary quarterly, and then we see where the areas of improvement are, and we reiterate for the next quarter.
Very good. I love it. So NPS is what Forum is doing. And Amelia, how about you guys?
Yeah, we also utilize NPS and have found that that's a really helpful way to get feedback. We've also baked in surveys to anytime we have a really high touch project with a company. We, at the end of that process, will kind of send a survey. I would just recommend keeping it incredibly short, like 1 to 3 questions on just how was that experience, what, constructive feedback. Our NPS is also anonymous, which is kind of, founders that breathing room of really sharing open and honest feedback. And then I would say just internally, because my role also does focus a lot on internal operations, really setting, we can't do everything, and we have so many goals and North Stars that we want to achieve. And so we really kind of take each quarter to prioritize and set a internal KPI process that allows us to really move the ball forward in the way we need to, but focusing on the things that really matter to us in that quarter or over the year. And I think that goal setting internally and making sure everyone's aware and on board with the roadmap is a really important, ability to defining success and knowing whether we've reached it or not.
Excellent. All right. Well, we have come up on the hour. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much, Steph and Amelia, for sharing your insight on the onboarding process. Yeah, really interesting to learn from you guys, and hopefully helpful for everyone who joined and can take away some inspiring notes that they can apply at their own firm. So thank you again for joining us, both to the panelists and to our guests. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone.